Okay, so I'm now recording, I hope, yes. Welcome to CORE Connects Rhode Island event, Attitude of Gratitude. Obviously, we're heading into Thanksgiving season, and obviously we have many challenges in our lives. And I thought that this would be a way for us to reflect together on the character trait of gratitude. And I asked 4 women who live in Rhode Island to reflect with us, to present their kind of individual personal relationship with gratitude, how they practice it, what they think about it, how it manifests in their lives. And so we have a lineup coming up tonight. We're going to start with Pam Caitlin Miller, who's going to get the ball rolling for us, followed by Elaine Shapiro, and then Dr. Anna Barron, followed last but not least, Andrea Katzman at the, on the tail end there to bring us into reflections and questions at the end. Gratitude. I just have to give a little bit of a Devar Torah because that's my want to do. The Hebrew for gratitude is hakarat hatov, recognizing the good. And that we talk about gratitude a lot, but maybe if we just recognize the good things in our lives, that even though there's a maelstrom of struggles and difficulties, and I'm not diminishing any of that, but that there's also good. And if we recognize the good, it helps us in many ways. So this week's Torah portion has the story of Rachel and Leah, who marry our forefather Jacob, and Leah names her 4th son Yehuda, and we are named after Yehuda, the Yehudim, because she was grateful for being able to bring 4 boys, and then she knew that she would sort of be the one who would bring most of the tribes of Israel into the world. And she was grateful at that point. At that point, she recognized a certain amount of goodness that had been bestowed upon her, and she named this son Yehuda. And we're named after that leader, that tribal leader that she named Yehuda for her gratitude. And so she feel entitled to that, this sense of entitlement. So these are just some of the thoughts that I wanted to throw out there, what we're entitled to, what we're not entitled to, what we recognize in our lives and what we don't, and how we maneuver through this COVID era with greater sense of equanimity. So to that end, I've invited this wonderful lineup of women, which has attracted close to 50 women, I believe, have signed up, which is really amazing. And I'm going to introduce Pam, who's going to kick us off. I'm going to read a little bit of what Pam said about herself, but not really. I met Pam probably 30 years ago when I started bringing my children to Temple Emmanuel to do the Purim spiel. And Pam was like this force out there, just joyous and happy and really loving, and we just wanted to like dance and sing with her. So that's my introduction to Pam. Pam's has been a member of this Jewish community for 40 years. She's worked in various medical facilities as a social worker. She and her husband, Sam, I guess known as Spam, I didn't know that. Pam, Sam, and Spam raised 3 children, proud grandparents of 4, soon to be 5, all should be well. She's very involved with Temple Emmanuel and serves as the Vice President for Religious Affairs. She's been featured in numerous Temple Emmanuel Purim spiels, and she is known for her humor and her warmth. And I will now hand you over to our lovely friend, Pam.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. And good evening, and thanks everybody. It's so exciting for me to see everybody here. To talk about gratitude, but first a disclaimer, and Alyssa sort of made a little mention of it, because at this time of the pandemic, with having missed Pesach, and with having missed Rosh Hashanah, and now looking at Thanksgiving, and not having it with our family and our friends and our big tables, and it's easy to sort of feel kind of hard. And it's kind of easy to miss out on thankfulness. But I find that if we live in the moment if we don't think about what we didn't have or what we might not have, if we live in the moment, it's a way of increasing our joy and decreasing our suffering. So if we live in the moment right now, we are in a room, but we are surrounded by love. So let's take a deep breath and breathe in that love and breathe in that gratitude. And then we can start. So take a deep breath with me. So I can't begin to talk about gratitude without talking about my grandmother. She taught me almost everything I know about gratitude. And I want to show you a picture of her. This is her and my grandfather at their engagement. And this is a picture of her when she was a little bit older. And my daughter, Michaela, is named after her. By all accounts, my grandmother had a lousy life, a really difficult, lousy life. She was born on September 20th, 1907 in Europe. And I say in Europe because sometimes it was Lithuania, sometimes it was Russia, sometimes it was Poland. It was out there. And she was born to a very poor family. Her father was an orderly at a hospital, and her mother tried to raise her as best she could. But when my grandmother was 2, her mother died of starvation, giving the last bit of food to my grandmother. So she carried that guilt of taking that food from her own mother for her whole life. You know, and because her father worked as a hospital orderly, he had to live on the grounds of the hospital. So she was brought to an orphanage where she grew up. And the orphanage, she never had one day of education there. She didn't have much food. She talked about how primitive the outhouses were. She said you wouldn't treat a dog that way. And I think that there were probably other abuses that she suffered that she didn't share with us. And she lived there until she was 12, at which point her grandparents, who she did not know that she even had, found her and sent her a ticket to come to the Golden in Medina, the United States. And so her father said she could go, and off she went by herself in steerage on this big ship. And she comes all the way to America, and she gets off the boat, or she disembarks, and there's no one there to meet her. Her own grandparents and her uncle missed the date somehow. And so she was interned on Ellis Island. You know, you hear about these refugees who are interned and who are in cages. That was my grandmother. And even when her relatives came for her, she was not allowed to come off the boat. She was not allowed to come off of Ellis Island. They planned on sending her back. Thankfully, her uncle was able to amass some sort of money and hire a lawyer and got a congressman involved, and she came off Ellis Island by a congressional edict. And she went to live with her aunt, who, for her own reasons, was difficult and took things out on my grandmother. She worked in sweatshops, and as a matter of fact, she was at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory prior to the fire. And she met someone. She longed for education, so she, after working, she would go to the settlement houses to learn stuff. And she met someone there, and she fell in love with him. And she found his family, and she loved his family. Unfortunately, he didn't want to marry a greenhorn, and he married a Yankee. But because she finally found some place that she belonged, she wound up marrying his younger brother. Wasn't such a great marriage, I'll tell you that. She had 3 children. She and my grandfather had 3 children, the oldest of which I can tell you now for sure has Asperger's syndrome. My Uncle Julie is still alive, thank God, and he's still he's still him. He's a great guy, but anyway, 15 months later, they had my mother, and I'm using air quotes here, who was called the normal one. I could tell you stories, I'm not so sure. But, and then 7 years later, they had another daughter who unfortunately had bipolar disease and schizophrenia and died when she was 30. Would you all agree that this was not the greatest life? She was very poor, she worked very hard, and yet my grandmother believed with all her heart that she was blessed. She'd look up at the full moon and she'd go, Pamela, do you see the moon? Das is not the moon. Das is David HaMelech, King David. And David HaMelech follows me wherever I go. I'm never alone because I see that David HaMelech is with me. She also used to have another expression, which I loved. She would say, God is so good, God bless him. I kind of like the idea of God blessing God's self, but she also thought that among all the women in the world, she was chosen for blessing. And what was that blessing? The blessing was that my brother and I existed. That we existed and that we loved her. And for that, she was so incredibly grateful. Her favorite song was God Bless America. Because for her, God bless America. And even all her hardships, she never concentrated on them. She concentrated on the good. So I really learned what it meant to be grateful because of her. I remember being 6 years old or 7 years old, and we were standing in my mother's kitchen. And it was probably about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, my grandmother slept very little, and unfortunately, it seems to run in the female side of the family because my mother, was always up, and unfortunately, so am I. But the first prayer she taught me was Moda Ani. I am thankful. I am thankful to you, God, for restoring my soul to me. And she would teach me things like that, and she was not a learned woman, but she always talked about being thankful. So I've started my own practice of being thankful, of acknowledging the source of blessings every day. And whether it's my ability to breathe, which people, can take for granted, unless you have asthma or COVID or COPD, but it's so easy to take just breathing for granted, isn't it? So the ability to breathe, whether it's my ability to walk, even if I fetch that my knees hurt, my legs still hold me up. I'm thankful. Whether it's, I dropped two bowls today and I broke them. I could hear the crash and I didn't cut myself. So thank you. So they're bowls, they're gone. So I want to share 2 practices with you. The first is to be aware of my senses. When I see a beautiful butterfly, when I see a flower, or someone smile, or someone who I haven't seen for a long time, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for my eyesight, but I'm also so thankful for my soul that allows me to appreciate it. When I hear a child's laughter or a beautiful piece of music, I thank God for my hearing, even though I'll tell you, my children will tell you, my hearing ain't what it used to be, and my soul for being uplifted by the noise. When I smell challah baking in my kitchen, or anything that Shoshana bakes for that matter, or the roses in the garden, you got it. It's an opportunity for thankfulness, and I thank God for this big, crooked, and perfect nose that allows me such joy, and the soul that's implanted in me to get pleasure from it. When I taste, well, of course, chocolate, for sure, but a good piece of chicken too, or perfectly cooked green beans, or a nice piece of fresh corn on the cob, or a watermelon. I'm aware that taste buds are not a given, especially in the day of COVID. And for this, I'm so thankful that I have my taste buds and that God has given me the ability to enjoy. And when I touch the hands of my grandchild, or give a good, robust hug to my good friends, who, unfortunately, I have not been able to hug for many months, or hand a homeless man a granola bar, I'm thankful for my hands, the hands that my grandmother taught me never to be empty. So my second practice, and this is one that I want to practice with you today, comes from my recent problem sleeping. I don't know if anybody here has been having more difficulty sleeping, but this is what I've come to. I lie in bed and I think of a letter, any letter of the alphabet, and then I start naming things that I'm thankful for beginning with that letter. So when I wrote this, I decided the letter was L. So here are some of the things. I'm thankful for love. I'm thankful for the gift of language, for lasagna, dairy only, for lanyards. I'm thankful for my friend Leah, for my friend Leslie, and for my friend Leslie's daughter, Laura. You get the picture. I just sit there and I name as many things I can that are blessings in my life, and I'm calmer and I'm able to sleep. So I want to do an experiment with all of you today. Alyssa, can you unmute yourself? Alyssa, can you come up with a letter, please?
M.
M. Okay, in the chat box, can everyone start writing things that they're thankful for, beginning with the letter M? So Maytal is one of those things that I'm going to say that. For my mom, for music, for being a mom. Mom and music seems to be big. Moonlight, oh, lovely. Matter motivation. Macaroni, Michelle, mountains. Mystery, I love it. Metabolism, milk, marigolds, money.
Marbles.
What?
Marbles.
Marbles, May,
Miracle.
Mincha, marriage,
Miracle. Miracle.
Mexico. Mazel, yes, my partner, my mom, medicine, margaritas for Max,
Mikhaim.
for the Milky Way, the
Miracle.
candy bar of the stars. I'm thankful for both.
Munches.
For menches, for my kiddos, for mouths, for
Mem-
movies,
Memory.
for memory, yes, for melon, for mint tea, for
Miracle.
mom, money. There's
Miracle.
so many things to be thankful for.
Miracle.
So we've made this great big chain of thanks for the big, for the little things, for miracles, all the big and little things of our life. And I'd like to end with a poem. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. This is called Three Gratitudes by Carrie Newcomer. It says, every night before I go to sleep, I say out loud three things that I'm grateful for. All the significant, insignificant things, extraordinary, ordinary stuff of my life. It's a small practice and humble, and yet I find I sleep better, holding what lightens and softens my life ever so briefly at the end of the day. Sunlight and blueberries, good dogs, warm socks, a fine rain, a good friend, fresh basil and wild phlox, my father's good health, my daughter's new job, the song that always makes me cry, always at that same place, no matter how many times I hear it, decent coffee at the airport, and your quiet breathing, the stories you told me, the frost pattern on the windows, English horns and banjos, wood thrush and June bugs, the smooth, glassy calm of the morning pond, an old coat, a new poem, my library card, and that my car keeps running despite all the miles. And after three things, as you can see, after three things, more often than not, I get on a roll and I just keep on going. I keep naming and listing until I lie grinning, blankets pulled up to my chin, awash with wonder at the sweetness of it all. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. and people are still adding to the chat. So you got us rolling. You got us acknowledging the good. You got us listening and recognizing and feeling calmer. And the poem wraps it all up to recognize all these blessings, all this goodness. Thank you, Pam. So I'm going to ask everybody to just hold on as we have all of our presentations. And then if people would like to stay, we can continue with a little chatting afterwards. So our next presenter friend is Elaine Shapiro. So Elaine is originally from Ayer, Mass, and she moved to Rhode Island in 1970. She is a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and she was the owner of Elon Salon and Day Spa in Cranston for 40 years until it burned down 10 years ago. Now she's the assistant of the kosher nutrition director of the Jewish Collaborative Services, and she is like overseeing serving 120 meals 3 times a week. And actually that's how I know Elaine. She's at the JCC, or was at the JCC, running this amazing service of feeding the people who are coming in for food, or delivering food, organizing Meals on Wheels. So that is not happening in the same way. She works at Brown Medical School as a standardized patient, an acting job to help the student doctors hone their bedside manner. And she cooks for Temple Torah Israel in East Greenwich. And she offers kosher meals there to purchase once a month. So I didn't know that, so that's good to know. And again, I know Elaine from her work at the JCC and seeing her busy running around, taking care of people and looking after people. And so I'm very honored and grateful that she agreed to participate and present tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to you now, Elaine.
Thank you, Alyssa. So public speaking is not my forte. Why I said yes, I have no idea, but I'm happy to do it, and it's wonderful to see all these terrific ladies joining us tonight. So my gratitude comes a little differently to me than it did to Pam. I was adopted when I was 6 days old, and I was adopted by a wonderful couple who brought me up, gave me a somewhat of an understanding of Judaism, but we came from such a small town that it was not in the forefront, and only on high holidays did we really involve ourselves in any kind of Jewish community. I always knew I was adopted, and when I would ask my mother about it, she would say that my biological mother died at childbirth and my father was killed in an automobile accident. But I knew where I was. I knew that I came from Massachusetts, and I let that go until I was 40. And at 40 years old, that's when the doctors start asking you about health situations, previous health history, and I had none. And so I decided to look for my biological family, or my history. It took a little time and a couple of different organizations, but through social services in Massachusetts, and I knew I was born in Chelsea. One Friday afternoon, I came home from work and my husband said, "A letter came from you today from social services." I said, "Oh, interesting." Now, I was brought up that my parents were Jewish. My biological parents were Jewish, because that's what my mother and father knew. So when this letter came and we held it, and everything was blacked out, you couldn't see any names on it. But when you held it up to the light, you could read it as plain as day. And the names on there were Mother Dorothy Machichi, Father Salvatore Machichi. So,
Elaine, can I ask you to tip the computer so we see more of your face?
Yes,
There
yes.
we go. Thank you.
So I was at that point very interested to see what lies ahead. Come to find out, they were married. They were still married, this couple who gave me up for adoption. I wrote a letter and I said, I don't want to upset anybody, but I'm just interested in finding some medical history. And I got a phone call back, and this gentleman said, Elaine, and I said, yes. He said, this is Sal Machichi. He said, can you tell me the name of the doctor that gave, that helped you in your birth? And I said, yes, Dr. Clayman. And he said, I think you're my daughter. So that's the beginning of my gratitude, knowing that I was brought up by two of the most wonderful parents. I was just so lucky, and I'm so grateful that my mother and father adopted me. I did go visit this family in California because that's where they live now. And I was brought up an only child in Ayer, Mass, finding out that I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, biological brothers and sisters. And this couple is still, they were married 60 years. So that has given me more of an insight that caused me to become a little bit more religious and to understand my background more and to realize how lucky I am, because I was, my parents made me feel so special. And I think of that so often. And then I was fortunate enough that I adopted my daughter. So it's kind of like, I guess, giving back. I was adopted. It was a wonderful experience for me. And I hope my daughter feels the same way. I don't know. You'll have to have her on next year. But that has given me tremendous gratitude. And I try to use that a lot in everything I do. In fact, I just left Temple Torat Yisrael. In fact, Susan Smoller and Michelle are on also. We were at the temple all afternoon cooking for Thanksgiving. Families had purchased meals, and so the only source our synagogue has right now to make any income is by buying food. So we were doing that today. And I do that just because it makes me feel good. And I'm grateful that I have a synagogue I can do that with and for. So that's, when you ask me about gratitude, that's where my gratitude comes from. And I feel like I'm a very lucky person. Also, Beth Salk is on it. Beth, we have a Shabbat group that started 30 years ago. We were at our synagogue one Friday night for Shabbat dinner, and the rabbi said, why don't some of you couples do this individually? And I, having the big mouth that I have, said, let's plan it for 2 weeks at my house. Well, that was 30 years ago. It might even be more than that. And we have yet to skip a month, except during COVID. Once a month, now we're down to 3 families. We started with 5. And that's also something that I'm very grateful for. They are wonderful people. They're family. They're not just friends. They're family. And we've seen our children get married and our children have babies. And it's been a wonderful experience. So Rhode Island has been very good to me. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Elaine. I'm feeling really choked up. Thank you. Inspiring and important to be grateful for relationships we have, and that they describe it so deeply and so soulfully. It's really inspiring. Thank you. Our next up is Dr. Anna. So Anna Barron. Actually, I can't see you. Oh, there you are, right? She's a mental health professional, practitioner, who's worked for a nonprofit with children and families for the last 10 years. She recently started her own private practice and specializes in LGBTQ plus themes, as well as integrated family therapy and couple work. She was born in the former Soviet Union, and she and her family emigrated to the US in the early 1990s. She has a strong interest in multiracial and multicultural studies. She is a wife. She is a mother of a beautiful little girl who's about to turn 18 months. And I met Anna, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, when Anna was a student at the Providence Hebrew Day School. And her younger brother was a little bit older than some of my children. But I don't know, there's been a very, for me anyway, a very strong chemistry I've had with Anna and her family. I don't really talk to you that much or see you that much. And I was so excited when you came to one of our events, and then I've tried to hold on to you ever since. I really very enamored of you and your family and how you live your lives. And so I want to learn from you, which is one of the reasons I invited you to speak. So I'm going to hand you over now to my dear friend, Dr. Anna Behren.
Alyssa, thank you so much for the introduction. So gratitude for me. When you had asked me to present on gratitude, I went to my husband and I said, so this is his forte. He lives gratitude every day. He is a very gracious human. So I think that, as I talk, I'm going to talk a lot about sort of the way that he has brought gratitude into my life, because I feel that in seeing it through him, it's given me a very different perspective. So my family and I immigrated in 1990 as Jewish refugees. So within 10 years of being in the United States, my dad, who was really the cornerstone of our family, got diagnosed with cancer and passed. So my brother was 10 years old and I was 18. So at that point, our life changed dramatically around what it is that I'll speak for myself in terms of what it is that I valued. And I have found that over time, my perspective on gratitude has changed significantly. And it's really been, it paralleled my developmental journey around what it is that I could recognize and be appreciative and grateful for. So in terms of contextualizing it to present day, I'm going to give you a couple of stories that have happened within the last 9 months, and I think that it really has brought to the forefront my awareness and my ability to understand the impact of perspective, in that it being of gratitude. So 2.5 years ago, I married my husband, and we had met maybe a decade before that. And when we initially met, he was fine, nothing to write home about. So I never imagined that I would ever marry him. In fact, I never really imagined I'd get married. I find myself to be a pretty strong personality. So to find somebody who could, embrace that, I didn't think was possible, but clearly it is. So 2.5 years ago, we got married, and 18 months ago, we had our first child. And we named her Michaela, and Michaela is actually named after my father, who was Mikhail. And I, waited a fairly long time to have a family, because I felt like I wanted to make sure that I had all my ducks in order. Now I have learned, sometime after, that I don't know that you can ever be prepared to have children, let alone have all your ducks in order, especially in the pandemic. So gratitude for me has really been crystallized around, the importance of family. So as Michaela has been growing up, so about 8 months ago, we were living at my condo that I bought maybe about 15 years ago, and we had a mold issue. So we were displaced, my husband and I, and my 8-month-old at that time. We had to move out. My mom was very gracious, and we moved in with her. Now, I love my mother very dearly. However, living as a full family there, where all of our belongings were at my home, was really a challenge. And when we realized that the condo wasn't going to be ready in the foreseeable future, we had to make a decision. And we made a decision to purchase a single family home. Now, I knew that I needed an act of God to get me out of my condo, because I wouldn't have left otherwise. It was 900 square feet. It was perfect for me. It's a little too much, a little small for a family of 3, but I needed an act of God. So he spoke, and I didn't, I wouldn't have listened any other way. So at my mom's, we decided we were going to purchase a home, and we did. And within we closed at the beginning of March. Within 2 weeks of that, the pandemic, they had called the pandemic. So my husband and I and my baby were in our new home fortunately, we were able to, the movers, you know, we were able to move all of our belongings, so we had all of our stuff. So within 2 weeks of that, my husband comes home and says, "Hey, there were a couple of, of my colleagues that tested positive for COVID." And prior to that, I had come home and I said, "I'm not feeling really well. I'm not really sure what's going on, but I'm achy. I'm more achy than general. I have migraines, so my headaches were not abnormal." And so, I went by my day. I didn't really think much of it. And then a couple of days later, we got a call saying that there was a COVID outbreak in his unit where he was working, and that 6 out of the 7 residents were tested positive. And at that point, about 17 of the staff did as well. So he got tested, I got tested, test came back positive. So I was positive for COVID, he was positive for COVID, and the pediatrician said, "Well, the likelihood of your daughter being positive for COVID is pretty high." So we were literally in this new home with all of our stuff in boxes and nothing more to do but, to be together and unpack. And I couldn't work my full-time job because when you're COVID positive, and at that point it was just brand new, so they didn't really understand sort of how to work through it. And because I have some co-occurring symptoms, it was really confusing as to like what was COVID versus what was being, what were the pre-existing conditions. So it took my husband about maybe 3 to 4 weeks to, work through it, and it took me about 9 weeks. And in those 9 weeks, they really probably were the best 9 weeks I have had since maternity leave. And I say that in jest, but I didn't have to worry about anything but getting up, attending to my daughter, and knowing that I can be there with her. And I think the level of gratitude that I gained from that was insurmountable, because I felt like, how blessed am I to be so privileged to be in our home with my husband and my daughter. And it was far more than 900 square feet. So we had space. If I needed to get away, I could go to my office downstairs in the basement, or he could do that, and we could, have space, and she could run around. And as I reflect on what is most valuable and important to me, 10 to 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to have this level of awareness. And my gratitude probably would have been, in areas that, many, 20-year-olds, talk about, whether it's travel, whether it's your education. Fast forward a decade, my perspective certainly is very, very different. And I have found that living with my husband and my daughter, I am blessed every single day with being reminded how to live gratitude every morning and every night. My husband will look at me and he'll say, "Have I told you how much?" And he'll just, tell me what it is that he's most grateful for. It's not how I was raised, and it certainly is not how I, imagined my life to be. And I am so grateful, to the possibilities of opportunity. And he embodies that, and he teaches me how to do that. My faith, I've always had very strong faith. However, I've not been religious. And for me, those two are very separate. He, on the other hand, is very religious, and he has never imposed that on me. And watching him bring it into our home in a way that feels very accepting and very welcoming, and he's sort of like, "Here you go, you can choose what you want of it," and is not imposing. And I think that's what I needed to sort of heal from the trauma of, of what religion has meant to me over the years. So that is my story on gratitude. So thank you.
You. Actually, my memories of you are go back to the time when your father passed away,
Mhm.
and feeling very like I wanted to hug you. And so thank you for giving a little bit more of the background and the story, and how grateful you are for your relationships and your health. And it's again very, very here we are in a world where we're kind of scared of getting sick and scared of a lot of things. So thank you for speaking out your experience and helping us with that.
And we were very fortunate, right? Our cases were very mild. We just had to sort of wait out the process. And I can't say that many other people have our experience, but we were very blessed in that way.
Right. Right, you might want to look at the chat in a minute. I didn't look at all of them, but it sounds like some people have commented there. Okay, so I'm going to present our last presenter, last but not least, of course, and then we can have a little chat if people want to stay for that. So Andrea, where are you? There you are. Okay, so Andrea Katzman's are coming up the rear. Grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, in a warm and electric Jewish community. And over almost 20 years ago, she and her family moved to Providence. In 2007, she started teaching pre-K at the Jewish Community Day School of Rhode Island, and is now grateful to be the head of school. Worked her way up there. Together with her students and colleagues, some of whom are on the chat here, she spends her days learning, playing, loving, and building community. She has served as a private educational consultant and has taught in the education department of Rick and Hebrew College. She has an extensive snow globe collection. Who would have known that? So now we all know. Loves gardening and reading, and always looks forward to her school's joyful weekly Shabbat dance parties. Hope they're still carrying on. Andrea and her husband, Steve Jacobson, have 2 college-age daughters for whom she is endlessly grateful. And all I just meet Andrea on the street and it's like, ah! So over to you.
Thank you so much. So I have to say to all of you, I am truly grateful to be here. I also want to share that, Alyssa, first of all, thank you. You exude gratitude every time I see you, and such joy. And also listening to Pam and Elaine and Anna, I feel so inspired by all 3 of you. In different ways, I feel like you are modeling for us the most profound ways to live with gratitude. So thank you for sharing your stories. I have to admit, I have an optimistic temperament. I think that for many years, I think I felt like my capacity for gratitude was something I was just kind of born with. And I feel as I've gotten older, I've recognized that it's actually something that I've practiced for many, many years. And as we often know, the things that we practice, we often get good at. And a little bit, Malcolm Gladwell talks about how if you put in 10,000 hours of anything, you can end up being an expert. And I think I've realized that I was blessed to both have a temperament and also grow up in a family where gratitude was practiced from when I was very little. And so it became a little bit of second skin. And I'm not sure that I always gave the kind of credit to the importance of practice that I now recognize. And part of that came from teaching at the Jewish Community Day School, and recognizing that that gratitude has become a habit. And this idea of a habit reflects, it's a mixture of conviction and repetition. And I think most importantly for me, habits are reinforced by community, right? The ones that really sink in and continue to expand and deepen. And so when I thought about gratitude, I first and always think of my family. And then the second thing I thought of was my work, and the fact that I feel incredibly grateful that my work feels like a calling. It feels like something sacred that I have the blessing to do every day. And it's reflected on one of the walls in our school. There's a quote by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel that says, "Just to be is a blessing, just to live is holy." And every day I walk into school and I recognize that working with these young children forces me to recognize that simply being in this world is an exceptional blessing, and being able to connect with others and to teach and to laugh, and yes, to even have Shabbat parties with bubbles, of course, with bubbles, is an exceptional blessing for me. And I also recognize that because I work in education, it's something that we explicitly practice in our school. And Alyssa mentioned that this idea of recognizing the good, or hakarat hatov, is something that we need to intentionally practice at all times. And it's in our very essence, right? Like the name Jew, Yehudi, comes from the same Hebrew root as the word to thank, which means that it's woven into the very fabric of our identity. And we know that now scientific research has reflected the wisdom of our tradition, that an attitude of gratitude helps us lead happier, healthier lives, more productive lives. It can even make us immune against disease. It can help us sleep better, and we're more likely to respond to people with patience, kindness, and compassion. I think that working in the school, what I've recognized is while all that is so important, its strength actually comes from reminding us that who we are and what we have and what we do doesn't come from our efforts alone. That in fact, in Judaism, what gratitude does is it humbles us. It forces us to recognize that we are the recipients of gifts, whether it's our very lives, of another's love and affection, of another's acceptance, of help being offered, of hope. So when I see our students make these daily reflections and expressions of gratitude, and we have a program in our school that is actually called Hakarat Hatov, where they document they document when they see others doing good, whatever that might be. They write it down, and then we acknowledge the people who not only have done good, but the people who have shown gratitude by writing down what they've seen somebody else do. So when I see these children do this, I recognize that in expressing gratitude, we multiply our blessings by thanking others. And during this time of COVID, one of the things that I think has been so challenging for so many of us is continuing this practice of gratitude. It is not an easy thing to do. And I think that oftentimes there is a sense of, if we could just be grateful, everything would be okay. And Anna, one of the things that I so appreciated about what you shared was that gratitude takes practice, intentional practice. It is as hard sometimes as learning how to run, or learning how to read for a small child, or learning to do really difficult things. It is not something that I think always comes so naturally. And certainly when we are feeling struggle, or we are feeling down, or we are feeling overwhelmed, trying to find places where we can be grateful can be so incredibly difficult. I feel like, again, I have this tremendous gift, because every time I get to walk into a school where I see these children for whom wonder is a natural part of their life, for whom breathing and a flower and a hug can be the most exceptional thing they've ever experienced. And so one of the things that I've had to, I take from them and I try to carry with me is that childlike wonder of the world. And one of the things I think I've recognized is that it takes an enormous amount of vulnerability in order to feel grateful. Brene Brown talks about the idea of courage means being wholehearted. And I've recognized that the best way for me to express gratitude is by thanking other people and acknowledging what makes them special. And that can sometimes make you seem naive. It can sometimes make you seem even strange to come up to somebody, for example, like Pam, and tell her that her smile and her humor and her exceptional love to everybody she encounters, literally every time I see her, she brightens my day. And in telling somebody that, you're opening up your heart. You have to be willing to have them roll their eyes at you or tell you that it's kind of strange or whatever, right? Whatever that might be. And yet I think that so often we take for granted how special people are, and we don't always articulate that the gifts that they offer us on a daily basis. And so I think one of the challenges I guess I will give myself, and I would offer all of us, is for us to be able to articulate to those around us, and not just those people with whom we are closest, but also people that we might encounter just on a daily basis, whether it's somebody who's helping you with your groceries or your child's teacher or a friend of a friend of a friend, to be able to articulate to them how much they mean to you. And so there is something in that that feels also very Jewish to me as well. This idea of B'Tselem Elohim, that we're all made in the image of God, and that even in our worst moments, we are challenged to find the sacred in another person, acknowledge it. And in Judaism, right, we don't just keep thoughts in our head, we are pushed to put them into action. And so part of putting gratitude into action means articulating to other people how special they are and how much they love you. I'm sorry, how much you love them or you care about them, or the meaning that they have in their lives. And so to end, I will just call out, there are two very special teachers at JCDS who are here, Lori Norpovar and Marissa Salvis, who inspire me every day in their capacity to hold their students with gentleness and with love and exceptional patience, and with a passion for learning and for growth. And every single day we are in school in person, they are putting their own health and their own well-being on the line, because they believe so passionately that our students deserve to have adults alongside them, to be able to learn and to grow, and they love their students tremendously. So I want to express my wholehearted gratitude to them, and thank you all for listening to me and for sharing tonight. I'm just tremendously inspired, so thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. There's an upbeat, we end on an amazingly upbeat note. I would like to open up the floor, because part of the whole point of Core Connects Rhode Island is to create community. And so these are launching pads for conversation, for what you were inspired by, what you'd like to add to the conversation, what you were thinking as you were listening to various different presenters. Just maybe just make a comment, whatever you'd like to throw onto the floor. We have a few minutes of conversation. Just have to unmute yourself and dive in. There's a lot of you're all wonderful people, and you'll have a lot to say, I'm sure. So please dive in. Maxine.
Okay, I would like to express my gratitude to Elaine on behalf of Avram and myself, that Elaine has been a lifesaver. When the day we went into lockdown, we were having lunch at the Jewish Senior Cafe, and Elaine, and we looked at each other, and Elaine said, "It's all set. Don't worry about a thing." And ever since then, we have lunches 5 days a week. And the other thing is also, we joined the JCC, about 2 years ago, and we walked upstairs, and either Elaine or Neil said, "Come in and have lunch." And here we've been ever since. So I truly have count our blessings. We are extremely fortunate. We have food galore. We have a nice warm home, and Alyssa, a year and a half ago, we were walking through and I was thinking, where are we going to have our flu shots? And Alyssa said, "Come with me." And that was one of the best days of my life. And there's so many people on the screen for whom I'm gratitude, have gratitude. There's Margaret, there's
I
Pam.
think we could go on all night here,
Oh my
Maxine.
God,
I'm gonna let
just-
other
oh,
people
there are
chime
other
in here.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Maxine. Harriet, please.
I think my biggest
Just speak up a little bit. Speak up a little bit.
I think my biggest gratitude at the moment is that I am Jewish, and that living where I live, it is always a teachable moment. That they can find out who I am and what I am, not by beating someone up about it, but doing what it is that I do every day to learn who we are and what we stand for, and that we stand for helping, we stand for loving, no matter what is brought against us. So every day, beside being grateful for everything else, my life, my family, and being able to get up every morning, I am truly grateful for being Jewish at this time in the world.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else want to?
Just say I appreciate your bringing everyone together. That it's so nice to be together as a group and to share such positive outlook and positive feeling. I appreciate it from all of you. It's great. And thanks for making it happen.
I just want to say thank you to Alyssa for always reminding us to be grateful and bringing always fabulous women together. Obviously, I have to give a shout out to Andrea, who's like the most amazing. I mean, she's my boss, but she's not just my boss. She's my friend. She's my hero. She's just like really a tremendous person to work with. And my son's teacher is on here, who just is genuinely a superhero in my book these days. Teachers have the hardest job in the world right now. I mean, they always have had a hard job. My parents were teachers, but I think in particular, these last 6 months had been just particularly trying. And his teachers, and in particular, Andrea, Marissa, have really just helped Bensi grow into like the amazing human that I know he will be. And it gives me hope that he's not going to like literally be still sitting in bed with me for the next 25 years. So just thank you. I mean, we all have to be reminded of this week as we're going into a really weird Thanksgiving. So I didn't really realize how much I needed to think about it. So thank you for that opportunity.
Anybody else want to contribute or say anything or? Okay, well done. Well said, Alison, says Ina. So just to let you know, since I have the floor, we have the great honor, pleasure of interviewing a Holocaust survivor on December 6th, Dr. Eva Eger, who survived Auschwitz and went on to become a psychotherapist, healing many, including herself. And she's written 2 books, The Choice and The Gift. And I have the great honor of being one of the people who will be interviewing her. having a conversation with her on December the 6th at 2:00 in the afternoon. I would love for you all to come. I think it's going to be very inspiring and very moving, and hopefully a conversation that will help us again. Like I think you know, like who is rich? It says in our tradition, in the Ethics of the Fathers, who is rich? He who is happy with his lot. And we had 4 presenters who exude happiness with their lots and gratitude for what they have. And I think another thing, Andrea, was making me think, as you were talking about recognizing the godliness and the love and the goodness in other people. I think it's also important for us to recognize the goodness and the holiness of each one of ourselves. It's easy to beat ourselves up. It's easy to put ourselves down and compare ourselves to other people. And I think part of what I want to call Connects to do is say we are all infinitely valuable. Our lives, Harriet, our lives, as you said, so eloquently said, our lives are a gift, and great gratitude for our lives that we're blessed with. And that to kind of turn it back onto ourselves and say, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my own image of godness, and to kind of think about that also as we keep going through what seems to be like the month of Kislev. We're gonna come to Hanukkah soon. We'll shed some more light into the world, come up some more ways to shed more light. I'm always looking for ways to use Core Connects as a way to bring light into the world. So I'm open for conversations and input if you have any suggestions of what we can do. And unless anybody else wants to chime in here on the nth hour, we've made it a full hour. Please.
Alyssa, can I just share really quickly? So just 2 quick things. The first thing is I really recommend, I read The Choice. Alyssa had me actually read The Choice. And if you're looking for something to help you access profound gratitude, that book is exceptional in doing so. The second thing is, Alyssa, you made me think of I have issues with perfectionism sometimes. So what you said about kind of recognizing gratitude for yourself as well resonated, and it made me think about the word in Hebrew for wholeness or completion is shlemut, and it's related to the word shalom for peace. And this idea that, yes, we should continue striving and always bettering ourselves. And this idea that feeling whole as a person or feeling shlemut requires making peace with who you are. And in this very moment, right? Not who you should be, or not all the requirements, that voice in your head that is always critiquing you. But simply this idea that you are whole and complete for who you are in this moment right now, in all of your imperfections. And so connecting the word shlemut, wholeness, with this word peace, and kind of blessing all of us to be able to have a sense of our own unique wholeness in this moment right now. So beautiful. Thank you, Alyssa, for reminding us of that. Oh wait, but you're muted now.
I know. And for you to putting that into words, right? So you're the consummate teacher. I needed you to put that into words. And I think, Pam, when you talked about dropping your bowls, how easy that would have been to like say, oh, like I did it again, or whatever self-reproach you could have gone with that incident, to say, it's a bowl. Gamzu Latova, it's all for the best. Who needed the bowl?
Well, when we can open up our homes to serve people again, 2 people aren't having soup. That's all I'm saying.
Or they can have it on a plate.
That would be very difficult. A mug, maybe.
All right, ladies.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. This
You're
was
all invited
wonderful.
to stay and schmooze. You're welcome to leave and schmooze. You're welcome to post chats, whatever you all want to do. I'm going to stop the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.